Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Flaneur Talks. I'm Azaria, and as always, I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Amber and Melina. So, if I recall correctly, the last episode we had, episode 9, was really exciting because we had our very first guest, Alex, from Sonderful Travel and Race Across the World on our podcast to discuss his experiences with travel and the show. So, if you missed that, then please feel free to go back to it. It was quite interesting just to get like someone else's insight into traveling and stuff, because obviously we can babble about anything on this podcast, but it's different hearing it from someone else's perspective. So today we're just going to be talking back about the university theme, or going back to the university theme, since we kind of touched lightly on different subjects, but we didn't really talk about anything in depth. So today it's going to be University Societies, which I feel like is a staple to university social life. What do you guys think?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it's a really important part of the non-education side of universities.
Amber, what do you think?
Good for free food.
Free food. Well, we'll get on to that one. So first thing I kind of want to talk about is, I guess, the first thing, which is like finding the right society for you. So I'm guessing, you might be listening to this if maybe you're considering going to university for the first time. You've got no idea where to even start with it, because university is a big place. So if you're getting ready to start uni, you're not really sure what you want to do in your spare time, I feel like this part is for you. So as with most of my personal advice, because my advice is very much the same across every single episode, it's not a one-size-fits-all matter. So what might work for us might not work for you. But I feel like what we're going to say is going to help you in terms of guidance, I guess. So it gives you a general idea of what to do and what to look out for. So if you're in the UK, your university will have something called Freshers Week. So can anyone tell me anything about what Freshers is, or what kind of things you'll see?
I think we might have touched on it a little bit in the first university episode, but the sort of basics of it, Freshers Week is that first week that you arrive at uni. Usually you are allowed to go into your accommodation about a week or so before the actual uni lectures and things actually begin. So at that point you're doing like admin stuff. You're meant to go in and sign up, register to show that you're actually attending, all that kind of thing. But as well, with Freshers Week, it's not just sort of the administration side of things. It's also about sort of meeting new people, because a lot of the time you will have probably moved out of your hometown and you'll be in a new area, and the only people so far that you might have met are the people that you're living with if you decide to move out. So Freshers Week, it gives you a chance to kind of see the Students' Union, which is obviously very important for students to make sure that you are being represented by the university. And with the Students' Union, they set up a lot of societies that a lot of times are made by students, and it helps you find like-minded individuals that you can hang out with, make friends with, and it just helps your university life sort of go a lot quicker, especially in those first few weeks when you're not really sure if you know anyone or not.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. Like, definitely something to consider, because what you'll hear mainly from other students is you'll hear the fun parts of it. We did this during Freshers Week, or we did that. But you don't really hear about the administration side of it, which is a little bit boring, but necessary. You get your student card. And that's important. Keep that, because we like student discounts. We love student discounts. 20% off things. It's like amazing. And usually in like student cities, places like Domino's, if you live in a student city, Usually you can get like 2 for 1 pretty much off every order. It's insane and dangerous. Amber, do you have anything?
I would say the free food, and they always do counts on going out to the nightlife. So at Huddersfield Uni, especially, Freshers was all about the nightlife kind of aspect of it, and just trying to get you like free entry into places and free drinks, and then the free Dominoes, because they always had a Dominoes stand.
I feel like the free Dominoes is definitely why a lot of people go. I know at Sheffield Hallam there were massive queues around the student union building, and it's just like you look at it and you think, can I be bothered to stand in that? But when you go in, because at least from my experience, Freshers Week stalls have been inside, it can get really cramped and it will get really warm, and you'll be a bit like, please get away, but they can't move anywhere because you're all wanting to get the freebies. So say, for example, going back to societies specifically, so say for example I'm an introvert, but I really want to try and kind of push myself to be more sociable at university, since it's like a fresh new start, you won't really know anyone. What should I do? Because obviously it'll be a bit difficult for me to put myself out there and all that.
I think, well, for me, something that I found, so before actually going to uni, I was quite anxious, and I definitely was a very introverted person back in 2016. So for me, I immediately, as soon as I got the acceptance letter from my university and I got my results and I was in, that was it, I joined as many Facebook groups for my course, and 2 for my college, because Lancaster is split up into colleges. I can't remember how many there are, but so that basically sort of narrowed down the amount of people that I expected I would be dealing with on like a more weekly basis. So I think, definitely find Facebook groups, and I think a lot of the students' unions will have Facebook groups as well. So you can obviously message people, sort of get in touch, find out who's on your course, and sort of start, talking to people, especially if you find it easier to talk online than in person. That's what I kind of did. And again, societies, they definitely help out as well.
Definitely, yeah. Because I feel like joining Facebook groups, at least if you don't say anything, people tend to realize who is in the group anyway. Maybe even joining chat rooms from, with people who you'll meet on the course and such, because they tend to have a lot of those as well. Again, you might not say much, you might not say anything, but people will notice that you're there. So that's at least a start, because, you joined the chat room in the first place, you're putting yourself out there in the first place, so that's the first step. But Amber, any ideas?
I did the exact same, so I went on Facebook and joined groups. I know with postgraduate study, at Manchester anyway, they gave you a WhatsApp group once you'd been accepted to join, so you could actually meet people on the course. But with undergrads, I just met people on Facebook, then asked them if I could meet them on the first day. So then I actually had someone to go around with on Freshers, because I didn't want to just be walking around by myself. So I just got on, asked them if I could go around with them, and then that's kind of how we kind of got to know each other.
Okay. Yeah, so I think that's definitely a good idea, because I wouldn't say any of us are super extroverted. I'd say we're all at least a little bit introverted, so I think it's definitely worth a try doing that. So what if someone doesn't find the right society for them, or they feel like they can't find the right society for them? Are there any options for them?
Oh, that's a difficult one, actually, because I mean, at most unis there are hundreds of societies, so 9 times out of 10 you will find a society that is incredibly niche and really good for you. I think my difficulty came with sports societies, because a lot of them were based on having actually competing in that sport, whereas for me, I mainly just wanted to play it for fun. rather than actually like competing and stuff. Yeah, I can see that like a lot of issues come about with that kind of thing. I think, well, you can always create your own society. Obviously, that's not something that you will probably be doing as soon as you get to uni, but over, like, especially at the end of first year, you can actually apply to create your own society. And I think the only thing that you need to do is have like 10 members, something like that. So if you find people who, you know, have the same sort of ideas as you, then you can absolutely go for it. I mean, I think at Lancaster there was the film production society that I was a part of, then there was a film society, then a TV society, a radio society. Like, they covered every part of media that you could ever want. It wasn't just like there's only one society for films, there's only one society for TV. And yet there's like, I mean, every uni has a Harry Potter society, a Doctor Who, you know, an anime society. So there's always like something, and then within those groups, even if you don't fit in with like everyone, I'm sure you'll find like one or two people who you do sort of still get along with.
Yeah. Amber?
I believe if some universities like Leeds Beckett and Leeds Uni, because they're classed as Leeds, you can join their societies from a different university. So because they're all connected in Leeds, you can actually join. So if I were at Leeds Uni, for example, I could join societies from Leeds Beckett if they had something that I preferred over there compared to what that university actually had to offer. But you just have to show them, obviously, that you do obviously go to that university that is joined on to the other one.
Yeah. Those are both really good suggestions, because personally, I don't know about you guys, but personally I couldn't find many societies that I was interested in at my university. So I went to the university that was in the same city. So I went to Sheffield Uni and joined one of their societies, and they were absolutely fine with it. So it's just kind of looking and not just exploring your university, but if you've got another university that's in the same city, maybe consider joining one at the other university if that's useful. Okay, so are there any benefits to joining a society, or are there any downsides to not joining one? Anything like that?
I mean, friendship, that's a main one. It feels kind of redundant, really, but yeah, it's meeting like-minded people, sort of getting involved with extracurricular activities. I mean, depending on the society, it can also go on your CV. But there are still things like, obviously, if you join a society in first or second year, the next year you can run for an exec role, which then again that's a big thing for your CV because it shows that you sort of take initiative and things like that. But yeah, mainly the friendship thing for me. Okay.
Amber?
Me myself, I didn't have any societies that I joined, so I didn't join anything. So the downside to that probably is not meeting other people outside of my course. So like for me, for example, I didn't really talk to many people on my course. I didn't really have any friends that I could talk to about the things that I was interested in. Whereas in a society that I could probably have done that if I'd have joined something that was on that kind of level. Obviously the benefits to joining a society as well is obviously being able to spend time with other people, knowing new experiences. So if you've watched anime, for example, and joined that society, you could learn about new animes that you've not seen before and then watch them and just that kind of thing.
Definitely, yeah. Both very good points. Again, geez, you guys are on a roll today. I'm just throwing questions at you and just have the answers for them. What else? I'm trying to think of something else that would be related to like finding the right society. So I guess kind of drawing on what Mel said, what if someone wants to be on the committee but they're worried that they don't have enough experience? So maybe, you know, they've done that first year of being in that society, but they're worried that even then they still haven't got any experience outside of that, you know, to kind of be on the committee and run a society.
I was on Film Production Society for a year. I did a bit. I obviously worked on a film, but I didn't really do much in the wider society. And just on a whim, I applied for the equipment officer job, which obviously, you know, it's sort of dealing with the equipment, making sure that it's not broken, things like that. And I ended up getting it, but you know, I didn't really have a lot of sort of experience. The person who was in that role beforehand, they will help you out. They will make sure that you are ready for it, because obviously, like, you know, the society needs these roles to be filled in order for them to continue going as a society. It does work in tandem with the students' union. So you do need to actually, like, obviously work quite well with it. So they will make sure that you are trained to the highest ability for that role before you actually come into it. And you won't actually need to take on the role until the next September, October, so until the next school year. But you will probably get I can't remember what it's called when you sort of vote on it.
Of like when you vote, like the next committee on, like the AGM.
No, there's like hustings, something like
Hustings?
that. I think it is. It's something like that, I swear. Anyway, so it's basically just like where everyone in the society goes, sits down, and the people who want a role will sort of go to the front. You'll spend 2 minutes saying why you want that role. If there's another person, you'll obviously sort of say why you're the better choice, things like that. Then you'll vote on it, and that's that. So yeah, you kind of do that kind of thing in like April time at the latest. So you have a lot of time to prepare before you actually go into the role.
Okay. Amber, any input on that?
Not really. I'd just say just apply for it, even if you don't have the experience, because like a job, you can still kind of get there with your knowledge of other things that you've got, and then just be trained on the job to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. It's the first time I've heard hustings. I'm still like,
I swear that's the word.
We didn't call it hustings. We called it an AGM, which stood for Annual General Meeting, and then.
I mean, that makes more sense.
Hustings. Now I'm thinking of husk, and I'm thinking of corn.
I swear.
And then in the middle of like the like term, or in the middle of the academic year, if for any reason you need to kind of fill a position because someone's left or they're not suitable for the role and they've had to be, be ejected from their role, we'd hold an EGM, which is an emergency general meeting. Hustings. I'm going to propose that next time and be like, guys, can we call it a husting?
Yeah, I don't know where it came from. That's just, well, I'm honestly, I'm going to look this up afterwards and I'm going to make sure that it is a thing and I'm not just making an absolute fool of myself.
But like me and Peak, I found out that people do use it negatively, and I've just been played like a fiddle.
Yes!
And played like a fiddle.
Vindication.
Oh, it's awful. Public humiliation.
I feel amazing now.
Okay, humiliation aside, what about society experience, if any? So, Mel, I know you mentioned briefly about what your society was about, but what was your experience like? What was the role like? If you could talk a little bit more about that, and if you had a good time, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so I was in Lancaster University's Film Production Society, or LUFP for short. It was literally, as what it says on the tin, it was a society to produce films. So we made short films. I think the first year we made 7 short films. So at the start of the year, you go to the welcome meeting to find out what the society is about. That's usually, how you find out if you actually want to be in a society. I would definitely recommend going to the welcome meeting, even if you don't end up going to the rest of the society. And also to pay, because a lot of the time societies are something that you have to pay to enter, because obviously they need money to actually fund it. It's usually only like a couple pounds, that's it. But yeah, so in the welcome meeting, we went in and well, actually, I think there were 2 welcome meetings. Sorry, this is just all over the place at the moment. But yeah, so I think there were 2 welcome meetings. The first one, they sort of introduced us to the equipment and the different sort of roles that you can do in a film. So we did sort of an exercise where we learned how to obviously control a camera on a shoulder rig, how to sort of get good angles, how to like mimic film angles, things like that. Then we worked on editing, sort of making sure that the sound and the video were in sync, things like that. We worked on like audio equipment, how to get like Foley, all that kind of thing. And then we talked about like obviously directing, producing, but you can't do that in your first year because obviously it's a head role. You do need, a bit of experience for that. So anyway, so that was the first meeting. Second meeting was the welcome meeting, to cut a long story short. And it was basically, we went in and they told us about the 7 different films that were on offer that year. So they already had a director, a producer, and a writer, and for every film. So they obviously gave us a sort of base understanding of what each film would be about. I think there was like 1 comedy, there were quite a lot of like thrillers or sort of more like darker drama films, and then there was some kind of psychological films, things like that. Obviously things that you can do on a small budget, basically. Oh, and there was some like LGBT films, things like that. So there was a lot that you could choose from for whatever you were interested in. Basically, so they said to us like, oh, here's all of the films. You put down like sort of your top 3, and then like your top 3 roles that you want it to be. So I think I put production manager because I really like working behind the scenes in a more managerial role. And then I think I put like camera operator and sound operator because I thought, I just want to do something in it. So I put down whatever. And they got back to me within like a week or so saying that I'd got like the production manager role on my first choice, and it was great. And we ended up doing some sort of like meetings, and mainly we ended up just dealing with the people that you were in your film with rather than the society as a whole. There were still a lot of things that went on throughout the entire society, but most of the time, especially like on your first one, you're only really dealing with that sort of 10 or so people, which I think is quite helpful because it really sort of it doesn't overwhelm you as well. So yeah, I absolutely loved it. We made I think we made 2 short films over my time at LUFP, and I'm quite proud of them, and it's really sort of helped me decide what I want to do. I'd really love to get into directing, but obviously, doing a film degree, it wasn't something that I thought of before the society, so it's still given me a chance to get experience. Yeah, I really loved it.
Wow, it sounds like there was a lot to do. Like, it sounds like you were really, really busy the entire time as well, because obviously...
Oh, yeah, it really was.
Production manager. Ooh, she's got those roles under her belt.
I might put some pictures on the Instagram of me get with my little clipboard on set.
Oh. Now, You mentioned that you didn't really join any society when you went to uni, but can you tell us a bit more about, like, maybe the range of societies that there were at the university, if you can remember?
We didn't have any range of societies, to be honest. We had about 10, and that was it. The university wasn't that great, to be honest.
Oh, was it like, dance, or were they mainly sports societies?
They were all sports societies or politics societies about, like, different places. I think there was one languages for all society, for all languages, but you couldn't necessarily just have a language about Japan or Spain or that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think language societies, it's difficult because you can only teach what you have the teachers for. So at Lancaster we had like a lot of French, a lot of German, the sort of basic ones. I think there was a bit for like Mandarin and Cantonese because we had quite a big like Asian community at Lancaster. So it gives you a chance to share your language, it gives you a chance to learn a language, but like I couldn't learn Greek because there weren't any obviously Greek teachers there, and I wanted to hone my skill, but that'll just have to wait a while.
Yeah. I think mine was like on the other end of the spectrum, my university, where there were too many societies, and it was just a bit overwhelming looking through the list of all the societies that there were and trying to decide which one do I want to join. In my first year, I ended up joining the Sheffield Hallam Esports Society. Ended up playing one of the competitions, playing league in one of the competitions, and then again in first year I ended up joining the K-pop Dance Society, which was at Sheffield University. So I'd trawl all through Sheffield after my lectures and seminars, go to K-pop dance because coincidentally I'd made a friend before I started university. And I was initially meant to go to Sheffield Uni, didn't end up getting in, so ended up going to Sheffield Hallam instead. But we kept in contact, and we met up for the first time, went to like this gelato's place called Sunday's Gelato. And he said, "Oh, I've got to go soon, I'm teaching." And I was like, "Teaching what? What are you teaching? Can I come? This sounds interesting." And he was like, "Yeah, sure." I think he said he was teaching dance, so I was a bit like, "Ooh, this sounds interesting." Went along, and at that point I hadn't really listened to K-pop, I'll be completely honest. I heard what was on the radio, Gangnam Style, and like literally just Gangnam Style. Went there, learnt the dance, and I was like, wow, this is really cool, isn't it? Wow. Ended up making most of my friends at K-pop Dance Society, and we still talk to this day. Like, we have our own Discord where all our friends would just meet up and talk about dance projects now. But at the time when COVID wasn't a thing, I missed that. We used to just go out all the time. Wednesday evenings, it's strictly for like the dance sessions. So that was really good because it was just a case of turn up, learn a dance, record the dance, see it on YouTube a couple of days later, and repeat. And it was just really good exercise. It was a really good experience. So in my last year of university, my last year of university, I decided to join the committee and be the dance coordinator for the society, which was fun. So I'd be teaching, not just teaching the sessions, but I'd also be delegating who teaches the session when and what song we'd be doing, putting up polls and seeing who wants to do this song or what song suggestions you have. So that would be a case of collect the information, learn the dance, teach the committee the dance before the session, whether that's days or hours. I would usually do it a few days before the session, maybe like a Monday, and then teach it on the Wednesday. and get that all recorded. Then I would also have to deal with performance team, which would be holding the auditions, picking the successful people, emailing them, sorting out rehearsals and practice, sorting out what songs we're doing, formations, and it was a lot. Mentally, it was a lot to do. And I'll tell this in the next section. But in the horror stories section that I've got coming up, but it wasn't great. It wasn't a great experience because obviously it's a big workload for a dance coordinator to be doing all that. Plus, we had something called Career Day, and basically it's a day that is all about South Korea, basically. And it would be my responsibility to be on the committee to organise Career Day. And that, on top of what I was already doing, was just blowing my mind because people weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. But on the day, you're running around making sure, is the team ready? Okay, that's great. Has everyone got their costume? Hair done? That's great. The judging for the talent competition. Oh my gosh, I'm judging the talent competition. It's in 5 minutes. Where's my clipboard? Where are the pens? I need a pen. So that was it was a great experience. And gosh, that is staying on my CV for a long time because I did that for 2 years.
I feel that. I'm getting stressed hearing about the workload, but yeah, I agree because I was obviously equipment officer for my films, for my film society, and the amount of work that you end up doing, and I did that in my 3rd year as well at the same time as writing my dissertation, and that was a lot to deal with.
This wouldn't technically class for me as part of the horror stories section, but being on the committee for the first year, there were some people who weren't pulling their weight, to put it nicely. So I ended up having to do that, and that included inclusions and doing events. And coincidentally, inclusions was one of the people who were making it harder. So I couldn't speak to inclusions about inclusions because they were the problem. So I ended up, and it's really stupid now that I look back on it, but I spent more time focused on the society and trying to make sure it was run properly, as opposed to focusing on my studies. So I ended up coming out of university with not a great classification, I'll be completely honest. Still got honours, that's fine, but it wasn't great, and that's probably one of my biggest regrets. So that ties in very nicely to horror stories. So does anyone have any horror stories about societies or their experiences with societies?
I definitely do. I mean, as with what you've just said, I'd preface to say, just make sure that you are using your time correctly, and you're not sort of, make sure that you have enough time to do both, basically. Yeah, so in terms of actual horror stories though, they definitely came about. So when I first joined LUFP in 2nd year, the film, it was really good. We basically worked on this film all year round. It was quite, I think it was quite high concept to say it was obviously a very low budget film, just sort of like a non-professional society film. It actually came out really well. But so basically a lot of it was shot on a train station, and we did that all in winter. So a lot of it was at minus 10 degrees. We were in basically a wind tunnel for the train station, and we obviously could only film when a train wasn't coming, because then the sound guy would just go completely deaf, just hearing a train coming through. And yeah, I mean, it worked out. It looked amazing, and we had some great days. But unfortunately, the train station that we were working in, because it was a small train station, that's why we chose it. But that also meant that there wasn't really much around. So, you know, most of the time there weren't toilets, there wasn't anywhere we could get food or anything, and we were working quite late at night. So it was just a lot to deal with for the first one. But again, for me, it was kind of that thing of like, you know, it's suffering for your art form. It's something that you just do. But yeah, so the film we were working on, we had a great producer. It was a co-directed thing. And I was like, one of the directors was absolutely amazing, and I'm still friends with him to this day. So yeah, friendships from societies definitely last, you know, way after university. But the other director kind of went on a little bit of a power mad streak for a while. And it got quite dangerous. But it also meant that we basically, so when we were doing the poster for the film, because we released the films in June, so we did the posters around April time, so they could be released in May. When we were choosing how to do the poster, because it had obviously done a lot in the trains, he decided that he wanted to do it like on the train tracks, and we were like, well, you can't, you know, go on train tracks. That's illegal for one thing and incredibly dangerous for another. And he was basically like, we'll see. And he was like, no, we're not going to put, you know, the actor at risk for you to, you know, get a nice shot. So there was like a whole thing with this, and we basically, a lot of the managerial team had a bit of a falling out with him. But again, because it's a volunteer thing, it's not an actual job, and because you don't really like get paid for it or anything, there wasn't really much that the exec could do, although they did deal with it very well. It was just sort of we just kind of had to work on it in the end, and he sort of took a step back mainly. But then, so when it came to editing, we'd also done a lot of scenes with green screen, which was so weird because we basically had guys in like morph suits, in like green morph suits, because obviously it's not high budget, you know, it was basically whatever's on Amazon. And you know, when we were just like walking around campus with some guys who have like green masks on and with a fucking camera on them, and it was just honestly the weirdest experience ever. So yeah, so we had that green screen. So when it came to editing, the director, he had said, oh, I can edit, I know how to like sort of edit green screen stuff. I know how to like get rid of it and make it look how we want it to. And it was like a day before the film had to be in, and he just sort of messaged in the group chat and said like, oh yeah, I can't do it, I don't know how to do this. And it was the other director's birthday that day, so we'd all kind of been out, and when we got in on the night, his the other director's girlfriend had sort of come back from wherever she'd been and surprised him, and he basically had to like leave her at his house because me, him, and the director of photography had to go back to campus and basically edit through the night. So we started at 9 o'clock at night, and we didn't finish until 6 a.m, which was the deadline for when the films had to be in for them to be shown. And by the end of it, we had a big hug, and it was one of those. It was an experience for one thing, but it was something that's definitely bonded us. Yeah, it was a lot. And then, yeah, a lot of the time, this is the thing, with societies, the main issue isn't the society, it's specific people. And obviously it depends on how you deal with that to whether or not it's something that will snowball or not. In the second year that I was in the society, which was my third year, when I was on the exec, there were some people on the exec that, you know, when we were doing the meeting for working out the next group of people. There were some people in that next group that were they were in themselves sort of going a bit power mad, and it was like, well, you haven't actually become the next exec team yet. And so it was just kind of trying to obviously maintain a good atmosphere for people who weren't in the exec, whilst also having to sort of deal with that kind of thing. But yeah, I think in the end it's just about maturity and obviously sort of getting through all that. But yeah, the first film, it's both my favourite and my worst experience at uni together.
Oh wow. It's just
had everything.
It just baffles me, man. It just baffles me how people can kind of act like that.
I know.
It's weird. It's really weird. Let's see.
I mean, you said that you had some horror stories.
Yeah, I do. I'm just trying to think of like the biggest horror story. Because there are multiple horror stories, and it would take an entire episode to go through every single one.
Hell yeah.
However, I will tell you one that sticks out in my mind right now, and that is a really bad habit of some of the members when I was on the committee. And I say members, not just the people who, came in, danced and then left. That's fine. But I'm talking about people who auditioned for performance team and got in the first time. And then my second year of doing it, they didn't. Some people who were on the performance team the first time didn't get on the second time. Some people who didn't get on the second time, didn't get on the first time, still didn't get on the second time. So my second year was a year of just getting backlash for people feeling entitled to something that they're not entitled to. So the way I did it is, if you get onto performance team, you have to pay the membership fee for the year, because you will be in performance team for a year, unless for whatever reason I remove you from the team. That could be that you're missing too many practices and just not saying anything. You could be acting up during practice sessions, or it could be you just don't turn up to one of the performances, or you say like a day before, oh, I can't turn up to the performance because of this reason, but you've known about it for months and it should have been booked off. Like, because our biggest performance, I advise people to book the entire day off, because it is essentially a whole day thing. We need you for the entire day. And I tell you that months in advance, before Christmas, and the event is in March. So that's one thing. So that's one of the reasons why, you might be removed from the team. Now, there were 3 people who spring to mind, I won't name them, who essentially acted up because they received the email saying that they are not going to be in performance team that year. And they were saying, oh, I was in performance team last year and I just feel like I'm being targeted. I had some people saying, oh, it's fat phobia that they didn't get in. I had some people saying I was transphobic. I had other people saying I'm homophobic, racist, sexist. I had every single obic out there. I had every single ist and every single obic because they didn't get onto the performance team. And it's not that, I'm not any of those things. I'm not. It's just that the way you danced wasn't as good as the other people who auditioned. And that's just a way of life. People will say no to you. You might get it the first time, but you might not get it the second time because maybe you're too complacent, or which, was essentially the case. People didn't put their all into their audition, and then they were surprised when they didn't get in. So that's essentially a sense of entitlement of, I was in last year, why am I not in this year? So that would have been one thing on its own, 3 people acting up because, sorry, I say 3 people now, I've just thought of a 4th person. 4 people acting up, sorry, because they didn't get onto the performance team. But then, essentially, the committee, I had to have a committee meeting with the president and the secretary because they felt like their friends should be in the performance team, even though they don't have a say into who gets into the performance team. Even though they're the president and secretary, they have to audition as well, just like everybody else, if they want to be in the performance team. But they felt that, our friends need to be in the performance team because they were the best in the group. Now, I do auditions in the sense of you do an audition on your own, you do the dance on your own, and then you do the dance in a random group that I put you in. I shuffle it around, I don't look at anyone's names, I put you into random groups. They weren't good on their own, and they weren't good in a group. But it was baffling to me that they felt that they needed to have a committee meeting with me to say that their friends need to be in the group. But essentially, I was coerced into letting them in and kind of readjusting everything that I'd already planned for the team for 2 people. Because essentially it was 2 people against me and then a mediator who was the inclusions officer who, although she did say essentially you are ganging up on Azaria and she's not able to put her point across because they just kept talking over me. Essentially I had to just kind of give in and let them in, which in hindsight I should have just said no, because no one's entitled to be on the team. Side note, the president did make it into the team, but, and this is going to sound really bad, but at the time, there was a point where I was accepting people to kind of fill numbers, as opposed to you were really, really good at the audition and you were an immediate yes as soon as I saw you. But sometimes it's a case of we kind of need to fill places out a bit. And weirdly enough, the 2 people at the time were 2 of the filler people. And then there was another case where I had to let someone else into the team because another committee member felt like her friend should be in because it was fat phobic otherwise. So I let her in because it was at that point where I was like, yeah, I don't have the energy to fight you anymore because I've got a lot going on and no one's going to kind of see my point of view anyway. So that was a year of coercion and essentially the committee ganging up on me to get what they want out of me. So that was one thing that stuck out in my mind because it was a bit like I'm teaching the sessions, I'm running performance team, and I'm working 2 jobs on top of that because that was another time when I was working 2 jobs and I was commuting from Leeds to Sheffield at the same time to make sure that stuff was where it was supposed to be. So it was just a really bad second year of being on the committee because I can't really tell you any good experiences I had for my second year on committee. It was just really bad and really upsetting. So I'm kind of glad that's behind me now because it wasn't great. It was awful. It was awful. So that's my horror story. Long-winded, but that was my horror story.
That is, yeah, it is horrific being in the it is good depending on what society it is, but obviously when it is sort of one of these societies where there's a lot to organise, like film society and K-pop dance society, things like that, it's quite difficult because you have to organise so much stuff. I mean, I think they said in so at the end of the year we had a premiere where we would view all the films and we have a meal afterwards, kind of an after party thing. And I think the president of the society said afterwards that I ruled with an iron fist, and I would 100% agree. I definitely used, whatever confidence I had to try and make sure things were as fair as possible. I said that because people had to come through me to obviously book out equipment, things like that. I said you had to have equipment forms in a week in advance, otherwise I just wouldn't give it to you, things like that. And I even made it so that on my own film that I was working on that year, that if the producer or director didn't get the form in, I still wouldn't give it to them because I didn't want to show like favoritism or anything. And thankfully that worked for me, because I am one of those people where I like, if somebody tries to say like, oh, can we do this? You know, it's that nepotism thing, isn't it? It's like, oh, I want to have my friends in, I want to do this, I want to do that, but it's not always what's best. And sometimes you do have to deal with it.
Yeah, because the whole I want to get my friends in, that whole experience essentially ruined it for the other performance team members, because I'd already set them dances to learn. So people had started learning dances already, and one of the girl group teams, they were really excited to do the dance that I'd given them, and I had to rearrange that because someone else was joining. So that kind of had a domino effect, essentially, and it was a bit like, oh, well, you didn't really consider how that was going to work, because I'm going to get the backlash for it. Meanwhile, you're there messing around for 2 hours while, you know, people are actually here to dance, to learn, to perform, and you're just here just for a bit of dance, really. So, yeah. Oof, got that one off my chest.
At that point, why didn't they just, like, create their own society? Like, if you're friends with them, just do it on your own.
That would be good, wouldn't it? I mean, if I could just put all those people into one society and just have them away, I feel like it would just be a really, really nice place to kind of be, because as a member, you don't really see the ins and outs of what's going on. You see the, oh, hi everyone, so today we're going to learn this dance. Well done everyone, you've done so well. But you don't see the, oh, you did this wrong. I don't really want to do that dance next week. This person doesn't want to participate anymore. I think we should do it this way. Like, you don't see that, and it's kind of taxing to kind of put on this persona of, oh, hi guys, nothing's wrong.
Oh God, I know. All the meetings, like, we'd come in and somebody would have like an issue with somebody else, and I think so there was like issues where I think on three of the films, basically things went wrong. Someone from either a director or producer like just left and decided not to do the film anymore, so our president at the time had to kind of take up roles in basically all of the films for the third year, and it was so chaotic. And I was just thankful that like my film was working really well, and we had like a good group. I mean, I think our only issue was that our director of photography, so the guy who mainly deals with the camera and makes sure it's all set up and stuff, he was a first year, and he basically didn't really I don't know, he wasn't the best, but for some reason he kind of told us that he was really good and all this, and for some reason they believed him, which I don't understand, because usually they don't go for first years for that kind of role. And so we were kind of trying to get around that without obviously like telling him like, you know, you're shit, basically. It's both fun and not fun at the same time. I love power, so
I think this podcast has literally just turned into a venting podcast, but it's just meant to be about societies. Gosh, wow, that was a horror story filled podcast. But before we go any further with those horror stories, let me just cut this off and just say, let me bring this to a close today, because we could go on forever.
True.
So everyone, thank you as usual for tuning in and listening to our advice and our horror stories. I can hardly call them experiences anymore, of being in societies. If you can even remember the advice, but that was in the first half of the video, and the last hour and a half has been horror story. So as always, if you've got any questions or suggestions, please feel free to let us know on our socials. Amber?
Instagram at Flaneur Talks podcast, and the Twitter is @Flaneur Talks.
Okay, Melina, do we have any other socials you can contact us on?
Well, yeah, we've got our website, which is in the link for the description on basically everything. You can listen, obviously, to the podcasts on Spotify, on Anchor, and on YouTube, where you will obviously get like pictures and stuff as well. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the YouTube channel as well, and on Spotify to find out when we're next recording.
Excellent. So, everyone, as usual, thank you for your time and see you at the same time next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.